want our family vision to be something so big that it's even beyond us, and it requires a definite touch of God on our efforts and our lives and what we're aiming towards, something bigger than just the six of us.
Hey guys, it's Mindi Linscombe and
Jordan Linscombe.
And we are here today to welcome you back to the Something New show, where we like to learn how to live a life worth celebrating. And recently we just had a really amazing experience with some friends of ours where we did a vision time together for a couple days with our kids, with our families. And we had a lot of questions about it after we posted about it. So we thought, why not do a full episode strictly telling you how we curated 3 days together with another family friend and involved our children in casting a vision for 2025. And so it's not too late. It's only January. So if you would like to do this, you can still do it after listening to today's episode. And if you think you've done a good job with the vision casting this year, I'm like, you can do this for 2026. But we had a lot of people ask about it. So I thought, hey, why don't we do an episode?
Let's dive into it.
So we have some good friends, Shay and Graham Cochrane, who have similar age children, similar values and hopes for how their families are being raised. So we said, hey, let's link up and let's spend some time together and talk about what our year could look like as families. Not necessarily that our years are going to be coinciding. They live on a different part of the country, but we intentionally chose some time together in a way to say, hey, what does our family value? And then going forward, how do we plan the year around that? So I would just tell people it doesn't have to be a family in your town. I think that was kind of a aha moment for us, is that we made a friend across the country and we seemed to really have a lot of things in common. So we said, why don't we do this together? So we picked a place and all came together we decided to do 3 days. You don't need 3 days, do you think? No, but I mean, it was intentional to spend those 3 days together. The first day, we just had a lot of fun catching up. We played poker and some fun games, card games around the table. And Shay and I sat down and kind of outlined what the second day would look like as far as the timeline. So do you have anything to add to the first day besides just a bunch of fun?
Yeah, it was just really great to do this with another like-minded family, to kick off the year. And we've done this activity and exercise, and so have they, but to combine it was really intentional and meaningful. So just making a statement, I think, for our marriages, for our families and our kids, be like, hey, this matters this much to us. We're going to carve out some days and do this with other great people. It was really enjoyable.
Yeah, I would say too, we had been separately doing this as just our own family for several years. So it wasn't like a new thing to do for either one of us. So if you don't have a family that you're linked up with right now, don't let that pause your productivity of doing it, because I would say there were many years where me and you just did it with our kids all by ourselves, because we didn't necessarily throw the idea out to anyone and we just were doing it as individuals. So if it is just you, take control of you and your spouse or partner to really decide, hey, how are we going to curate what we do in the year to come? So the first day, again, was just kind of like we met up in the place, had a good dinner, had some fun together, got the kids to, get to know each other a little bit more comfortably, so that by the next day, we did tell them that night, hey, tomorrow is our vision day. So just so you know, we're going to talk a lot about what our family does and why. And so we just we prepared them for what that day would look like, but we didn't go into anything deep that night before. It was just all fun. So you could, like I said, do something really fun that your kids enjoy. We happened to just play cards around the dinner table. All right, so day 2, we got up, we had breakfast, and we kind of, we would do each section that I'm about to talk about. We would kind of do a teaching on it, which it was awesome this year because we didn't have to, between me and you, teach every session. So we kind of split it amongst the 4 of us, which that was nice. Another perk of joining up with another family. But then we split up and worked on it as individual families, and then came back and asked one of our children to present what we decided, which was great for them to practice presenting skills. I feel like it was great for them to, when you have to share what you've decided on, it cements it a little bit more in your brain. So there were intentional sessions. I think that we chose certain children to present it back because I think they had it lock in a little bit more. Oh yeah, that's why we do what we do. But do you have anything to add to the teaching portions before we go into what we taught?
Yeah, we might get to this in a moment, but I think we started by looking back as well too. And
yeah, that was the first session.
yeah, so we'll unpack that in a moment. But I think just helping our kids walk through of like, hey, it matters to take these moments, and family communication is just like step one, and making sure that good things get planned for the year, but also that you put good culture into your family, and otherwise life just happens, and you look back and you're like, oh, how much screen time did they have, or how much did we have, or were we in different rooms, over the weekend or a month or over the year. So unless you carve out intentional times like this, it doesn't happen, And so I think prepping our kids of like, hey, this is what we're going to do. It wasn't a, hey, are you okay with this or not? No, we're like, this is what we're doing as a family because we care about this and we're intentional. That set it up, I think, for a good expectation. I think also our kids are currently 14 down to 7. And I think we were just really honest with ourselves and our friends that we're visiting. Like our older 2 are going to be more involved. We're going to keep our younger 2 as involved as we can. So we tried to get their input and get their feedback and their ideas shared early on with some of the elements, but just knowing like, hey, they're 10 and they're 7 and their attention span's not going to go for like 2 days, but we made the most of it to get their input.
Yeah, we kind of let them come in and out.
Yeah.
Okay, so session 1 on day 2 was we started with Remember and Celebrate. So we looked back at the year that just closed up and we said, what are some things? And we had big Post-it note papers on the wall and gave kids markers, which got on our paint, but that's okay. That's another story. They started writing on the walls of things that they remembered from the year, highlights that they want to look back and celebrate. So it was, a family vacation or a goal that they had personally set. One of our kids read a certain amount of pages and was super proud of that. And, just anything they could think of to remember and celebrate. And that was probably the funnest, easiest way to break the ice that morning, because when we went back to present, the kids were eager to share some highlights and eager to talk about their year. And it was fun. So we kind of closed up 2024, thanked God for it, and said, while it came with its challenges, it also had some great things to celebrate. So
a quick point too is we had taken pictures of our exercise a year before of what we were aiming at. So it's kind of fun to compare as well too, and go over with the kids. Like, hey, this is what we said, 12 months ago, and what things we were looking forward to, and then we could see which ones came to completion or things that are still in the works.
Right. And there's both. Okay, our second session was a little bit more about our why, like what's our vision and mission as a family. And you and I kind of set that years ago, but the kids have definitely, massaged the messaging to make it even more curated to like who we have become as married 20 years. It's like, okay, we started with a mission and vision that's definitely evolved as we've come farther into our relationship. So we talk through our mission and vision again as individual families and why we exist. And I think
what we're about,
like, what is the Linscombe family going to be known for? What is this family going to be known for? And we separately worked on those things and kind of made a list of different values we have, things that are important to us, but also, why our family is on this planet. Like, how are we going to use our skills and our gifts and our strength to impact our communities in what ways? And so it was just a really awesome time to come back together and share our mission and vision and values with each other. And because this is a family that has so many similar mission, vision, and values, it was really cool to see these kids sharing, oh, that's what we're about too, or that's similar to our family too. And there's a lot of aha moments of like, okay, we're not the only parents talking about this with our kids. Like, other parents also have similar values. And so I think that as they presented, they had those realizations, and it just, if anything, it just echoed the importance of those things that we do value. So mission, vision, values, second session, one of the parents talked on it, taught about it a little bit, and the importance of creating a vision for your family, or, even from a biblical standpoint, why is a vision so important? And then when we split up to work on it, we had those Post-it notes out, wrote everything down, and then came back together and each family shared.
Yep. Yeah, and we harped a little bit with the kids of like, here's why vision matters. We hear from the ancient wisdom of the Bible, like without a vision, people perish, their motivation, their drive, everything shrivels up, right? Unless they really have a clear thing that they're aiming for. And we went into like, we want our family vision to be something so big that it's even beyond us, and it requires a definite like touch of God on our efforts and our lives and what we're aiming towards, something bigger than just the 6 of us. And then going into the mission, like, hey, this is more of the practical things we want to do and live out week by week to edge towards that, to go towards that direction of that vision. And we dived into it, like, we've got to keep things in front of us. Otherwise, like, you lose direction on where you're going.
Mm-hmm.
And so,
which brings us to our next section.
Yeah.
So in the third well, first of all, then we took a break for lunch after those first 2 sessions because, the kids needed a break. We also went outside and went on a walk. And so it was like a good time to like breathe some fresh air and touch something real and have some lunch. And so we pet the horses, stretched our legs. I think, you can't go straight through and be like, oh, these kids are going to be involved. No, they were struggling after session 2. So we said, okay, no problem. Let's have lunch and go out and walk. And so that was really fun too. Good, funny, like time to just banter a little bit and have fun. But then when we came back for session 3, we talked a lot about how we make decisions. So we went into, one of the parents shared about, how to study God's word. That's an important way that we make decisions as a Linscombe family, how to hear God's voice, and then how to frame those through our value system. So when we have all these values and mission and vision, what we're about, and then we learn how to read God's word and hear his voice, that's going to help us as a family make really good decisions. So we're about to go into what we say yes and no to. Mm-hmm. However, before we go into that 4th and final session on what we say yes and no to, we wanted to really make session 3 about like, how do we make those decisions? How do we read his word, hear his voice, and use our values framework to kind of put that together and say, okay, this is what we down the road are going to say yes and no to based on those decision-making criterias.
Yeah.
Do you want to add?
Yeah, it's like a filter because we've had these moments, and I know other families may have it where you're like, oh my gosh, 2024 is done, or like December's over, and how did that happen so quickly? And we missed out on this. So we've tried to develop these really filters. Mm-hmm. And if you use your values as filters, then it helps you that you're saying yes to not just good things, but to great things or to God things in your life. And then exercising that no muscle of like, we set clear vision or goals of like this year or this season of life is going to be about X, Y, and Z. And it's either yes or no. Like, is this helping our family advance towards that or not? Mm-hmm. And so pragmatically, if somebody's goal is we want to have like really intentional eyeball time as family and have like worthwhile, deep conversations, then it helps you. So, okay, should our kids sign up for this or that? Should we do this on an open Saturday and weekend or that? And I think that's a work in progress for us still, but it's helped us to get better, right? Mm-hmm. I'm just saying like, okay, is this really going to add to the value that we're talking about as a family and push us further in that or take away and kind of lose an opportunity?
This episode is sponsored by Something Blue 30A. Looking for the perfect vacation spot to disconnect from everything, put your feet in the softest sand, and enjoy a fresh, renovated 2-bedroom, 2.5-bath townhouse right on the beach in my favorite place in the world? Well, 30A is situated in the Panhandle of Florida, and I'd love for you to check out Something Blue 30A on Instagram and make it the perfect place for your next vacation. So, third session, again, recap is all about how to hear God's voice, study his word, and make decisions through the filter of your values. So after we do a teaching on that, it's actually a pretty cool session because we had one of the parents teach on it, and then our kids read the word. We all opened our Bibles, read the word, and did a practice of listening to God's voice. And so it was like an actionable session where it was really active, which was good to do after lunch because people, were fresh, but then also it made them very involved because they had to do some active listening. I loved that session so much because it led us right into session 4, which was basically deciding, hey, what are we going to do with our time that matches all of the people that we are, the description words of who we are, because, there's some people that are sports families and some people that are artists or musicians or great at serving. There's just so many things that you can say yes to your point. But it's like you have to have a filter on what you say yes to, because guess what? There's also things, in my opinion, that are going to check all the boxes that are still a no. And if you just use all the values, to say yes, you would say yes to so many things.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to go, okay, like of all the amazing things that have made it through the filter, now we have to pray about it and feel like, what do we feel a green light on? And me and you both have to have a green light in order to say yes to it for our kids, for our family, for our time. So after we do so when we begin the fourth session, we're basically making either a list or having a good conversation as a family. What do we want to say yes to this year? So we decided on like, what are we going to do for our family vacation? We decided, hey, how do we want to spend time with grandparents? We said, how does it look to serve? Like, when are we going to do some serving opportunities because we value service of others? What are some things that we're going to kind of hone in on when it comes to each of our 4 kids? They have a lot of activities, right? But it's been really cool to watch them kind of spend some time alone and come back to us and say, Mom, I really feel like this year I should be just in these 2 things. And I was so proud of one of our kids for deciding that, because they're seeing that this is like what they're naturally bent towards and their gifts and their strengths are, and they can't do everything. So they want to go deeper in those 2 things. And I said, that's amazing. So that's what we're going to say yes to, and we're going to go all in. So the 4th is basically what our yeses and nos are. And we kind of wrap up with just those simple yeses and nos. And then we went to dinner, went out to a fun movie where we had like an entire IMAX cinema, 500-seat stadium to ourselves for some odd reason. Maybe it was just like a Thursday night or something.
It was hilarious.
But it was so funny. We walked in and we were the only people in the whole room with 500 seats, and we saw the best, screen ever with a movie. It was so fun. But so that night we ended at dinner. It was like 4 or 5 o'clock. Wrapped up, had dinner, went to a movie, had a fun night. But then the next day, the 3rd day, really it depends on the ages of your kids. But for our kids' ages, they were in our group. It was all 15 and under. We said the kids don't have to be a part of the 3rd day final session, session 5. So session 5 was calendar mapping. So what we did was we printed out every month at a glance. And we just did it from Apple Calendar. It was super basic, but it was like January, February, all the way through. So every page had a month. And then we taped all those months onto a table. And that day just happened to be nice, so we were able to go outside. And we plugged in all of our definite yeses, like what we felt definite yes to. And then we sat down, like each couple was working at different ends of the table. We weren't even kind of corresponding, but it was good to bounce off ideas if we had questions. But this was just the parents, and we put down our definite yeses and our commitments and what we felt strongly to be a part of. So at that point, I think it was kind of nice because you could see where there's lots of gaps, and we just ended up closing, I feel like, in prayer, saying, hey, wherever there's space on the calendar, help us to not just be eager to fill it, but also open and flexible for spontaneous opportunities. Because if you fill out your whole year at a glance, what I've known or seen is that then you have no room for if somebody asks you to be a guest speaker at something, or our kid gets to join a team that he's been dreaming of, or, it's important to not fill it up so that it's so maxed out.
Yeah.
But
have margin.
Have some margin so that when an opportunity comes available, you're like able to say yes and move some things around. But we definitely put already year at a glance, like when all those major yeses are already committed to, we feel like it's in unity as a family, aligns with our values, and we feel like God gave us a piece about going forward with it. But all those major dates are already down.
Yep. And how would you advise somebody, Mindy? Because we've looked at a bit of a formula. It has to almost be a little selfish, right? When you're looking at what are your priorities going to be. So, some people will start with this, that, or another, but we also try to start with family time. Like, hey, here's going to be like intentional family trips and other things, and get some of those on early, right?
Yeah.
So when it comes to doing those building blocks.
It's starting with, personally, I think it's starting with the Sabbath. And looking at whatever you decide to make your Sabbath as a family and saying, okay, like one day a week, we're literally not going to work or say yes or do something on that one day a week. So deciding, and that is, to your point, a family day. That is a family day. It's family time. It's a family day. It's
guarding and stewarding that time.
Stewarding one day a week that you're like, this is going to be the day we spend as a family. But then to your other point is like seeing over, let's just say there's a 6-month push at work, wrapping that up with like a perfectly timed family vacation after the 6 months that you had this big push at work.
Right.
So you can kind of celebrate, okay, we made it through that, and now we can go do this thing together.
Yeah, because we've learned from the mistake of like vacation than a really big presentation or teaching, and that
It's just,
you're not enjoying it.
no, it's weighing on you the whole time.
Yeah. Yeah. So timing matters.
Yeah, we
for sure.
always prefer to vacation after a big push instead of before, so you can really turn it off.
And I'll bring up we were even looking at some decisions last week that we've landed since then of, should we do this or not? Should we help lead this or not? And another filter for us is what can be done while the kids are in school or not, right? Mm-hmm. And because if you've heard other episodes, it really matters to us to be present with our kids at carpool. 99% of the time we're there. So I love that as well too. As we're looking, we're like, okay, here's the year at a glance. But if this is a rhythm of a meeting or something we're leading, is it within our workday or those go time hours, or is it going to interfere with our time as a family? And so that's been another, I think, filter that helps us as well too.
Totally. So just to wrap it up, day 3, calendar planning with the printouts and writing it all down, seeing it on paper, seeing where the heavy flows are and the lighter days versus the heavier schedules, and just saying, hey, this is when our family needs to take breaks. And then we tried to wrap that up by lunch and go do something fun with the family.
And I brought some really good coffee during the calendar planning. That helped too.
Yes, it definitely did.
We tried to keep the treats and things going.
Again, the heavy lifting for the kids is really day 2. Mm-hmm. And we tried to keep them super active, super involved. They had their journals out, their Bibles, their calendars. They were very involved. And then, like I said, day 3, the parents could kind of wrap it up with finalizing calendar. But
can I go back to day 2? Because we did one other exercise where we rated ourselves on 8 kind of key aspects of life. So
I forgot about that one.
That was really intriguing. And then I was sitting there looking around. I'm like, I don't know if our kids have ever done this before. Like you and I have, once a year, looking at 5 or 8 key dimensions of life.
Isn't that how we wrapped up before we went to dinner? And then we all went around and shared our highest and our lowest number.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So everybody got to share their top category and their lowest one that needs improvement. And so we rated ourselves, right?
Let's just try to remember the categories. It was reading, exercise, friendship, relationship with family,
finances, emotional, mental health, were some of the aspects. So there's kind of 8 areas that applied to somebody, no matter what. The finances and the kids, it applied. Maybe less for them, but it still applied. Mm-hmm. And so I just looked around the room and was like, this is really good for our kids to try to exercise this muscle of okay, self-reflection. How was 2024 for me or not? And we had 10 was thriving. And then, 0 was totally failed,
Yeah.
and try to be honest with ourselves. And then we also kind of laughed through of how people score themselves and how hard they were on themselves.
Yeah, some people were 5 and 2s, where other people were 10 and 9.
Yeah.
It was cute when our kids were rating themselves. So anyways, that was a great way to close out day 2. But I think that, like I said, carving out that time was something I will always treasure. It is super hard with so many busy people, but trying to do it over Christmas break, and they had not gone back to school yet, was helpful because activities hadn't started up yet and things like that. You could do this over a weekend, but I think that the flow really was perfect. Just starting with an easy night on day 1, and then day 2 being a full day, and then day 3 just being a half day again, mm-hmm. and then super fun. So our kids were having fun on day 3, even when we were doing the calendars.
Yeah. Well, and what you're saying is we managed energy. We've both worked in corporate in the past, years ago, things, and those 8-hour sessions where you're in a room and hardly getting outdoors, that's not life-giving for hardly anybody. And a lot of our listeners and viewers have probably been there. So we were intentional about the length of sessions, food, snacks, drinks, getting outdoors. Thankfully, we had great weather. But that really does matter, make for a better experience overall. Mm-hmm. And then having other voices, other people and personalities in the room, it definitely helped our kids stay further engaged if it was just us. Mm-hmm. We do a pretty good job, but kids and teens are teens, and it just really helps to have other great influences inspiring your kids if you're doing this with them.
And as much as you can do, think about a training and development session, having those Post-it boards with markers and snacks on the table and drinks,
notebooks, and
it was just very kinesthetic. It's it was comfortable whether you wanted to write or you wanted chew on something or stand up and walk around. It was really comfortable to stay engaged.
We had music playing, instrumental music for reflection sessions. We just try to keep it flowing.
Yeah.
Yep.
It was good. So anyways, I think, any family looking for a little bit more clarity and stopping the rat race of what you say yes and no to, just always being in the swirling, whirling, like, how do I know what to do? It's just so good to set aside time and really decide as a family what you're about. So anyways, I think we're going to have a downloadable with this episode, which will be awesome, how to structure your day 1, 2, and 3. So if you would like the downloadable, definitely send us your email address in the DMs, or even you can email us. But I just want to make sure that anybody that wants a copy of our structure here, what would be the best way for them to get it?
Yeah, it was I think reaching out on Instagram is the easiest, and DMing us there.
With an email address.
You can also go to thesomethingnewshow.com. And there's some ways we can connect through the site as well, too, to make sure you get this super helpful resource on like framing out your year and being even more intentional with your family.
I love it. So feel free to share with your friends. And you guys, I hope you stay along for the ride, because we have some exciting guests this year lined up for 2025, and so much we want to dive deeper in with you, with your life, to help you learn how to live a life worth celebrating. We'll see you next time, and I can't wait to talk to you soon. Thanks for listening. Be sure to subscribe to the show, rate, review, and share with a friend. Also, follow The Something New Show on Instagram and Facebook. If you want a fuller experience, watch the show on YouTube to help you create a life worth celebrating.